Now, it's time for today to talk about the ranged DPS tier sets, inspired by both of each spec's hero talents. Now, while we complain somewhat about the fact that most of the tanks tier sets were mostly about more damage and not really about tankiness, we actually do get what we wanted in the hero talents of the DPS because they have a lot of damage. Half of these will seem like OP at first take because of the actual numbers on these things. They seem to be quite a bit more powerful than the current tier sets. Obviously, there is like 2 months before the release of the season, so many of these, if not all of these, might end up being nerfed in the end. For now though, starting from Balanced Druid. Balanced Druid is split between the two Elunes Chosen for AoE and Keeper of the Grove for single target, and they fit this team quite well because Elunes Chosen gives you your Starfire damage increased by 25%, which is already like a 5% damage buff. Just the first part of your 2-piece in a Mythic Plus key is basically already a 5% damage increase in Mythic Plus. On top of that, gaining Astral Power with Starfire, so every Starfire cast has a 50% chance to launch a Star Surge at half the effectiveness on your primary target. This is not too relevant in the sense that you don't really have any problem as a Balanced Druid to rack up your Star Lord stacks anyways, and the damage of a single Star Surge at half effectiveness, you know, Star Surge by itself doesn't do that much damage on average. Half of this is even less. I guess it's slightly better in Mythic Plus because it does give you more priority damage on one target as you are using your Starfire for AoE. At least you're also doing some more focused damage on one target. What gets really strong though is the 4-piece. On impact, Star Surges launched by Starfire will also split up to hit 3 additional targets. Whatever, it's still not that great. What is relevant is that whenever you get this free cast of Star Surge, you gain 1 stack of Gathering Moonlight. And when you cast your Fury of Elune, you will gain a 5% damage for 12 seconds per stack of this Gathering Moonlight. So if you can rack up to 6 different stacks, it's a 30% damage boost for 12 seconds. At the moment, your cast times as a Balanced Druid of your Fury of Elune are so quick, because you're playing with Lunation, which reduces the cooldown of your Fury of Elune, are so quick you can't even get actually that many stacks of this off, because your Fury of Elune will come off cooldown way too early, basically. You will need about 12 different Starfire casts if it has a 50% chance to cast a Starfire. So you will need 12 casts to get 6 Starfire to cast, to get 6 stacks of Gathering Moonlight. But even just 4 stacks, which is reasonably easy to reach, will give you a 20% damage window for 12 seconds inside of Fury of Elune, which is very good for your burst in Mythic Plus and very easy to have pack by pack, pack after pack in Mythic Plus for your AoE damage. Keeper of the Grove does have some pretty possible degenerate gameplay around this playstyle. Casting Celestial Alignment or, of course, Convoke will call the assistance of a Dryad for 10 seconds for CA or 5 seconds for Convoke, which will cast a Star Surge at 70% effectiveness or Starfall at full effectiveness. The 4-piece is what makes this interesting. When your Dryad fades, your next 2 Star Surges will damage for an additional amount equal to 5% of your damage done while it was active, and splash 100% of their damage onto nearby enemies. So imagine you are playing, of course, Keeper of the Grove, you pop all of your CDs, your trinkets, your Force of Nature. Let's just say because of this you're playing with Incarnation. You pop all of this, and in the 10 seconds of this Dryad, in this burst, you have 5 million DPS. This means that after 10 seconds, you did 50 million damage. So at the end of this 50 million damage burst, your Dryad that is gonna cast is gonna accumulate 5% of this 50 million, which is 2.5, to then splash it around a bunch of enemies. So it's good help in Mythic Plus. It's unlikely this could still just match the damage you get from this tier set in Mythic Plus in AoE from Elunes Chosen right now for Balanced Druid, but both of these tier sets are still pretty good, pretty powerful for Balanced Druid. Where it gets a bit off is Augmentation. The first one for Chrono Warden is bad. It's good-ish for Preservation, which is still gonna play Flame Shaper anyways, but it made some sense to get you some faster cast times and faster cooldown recovery rate as Preservation. This has less of an effect for Augmentation. To be fair, even their Scale Commander one is not as good as their Devastation version. While you Deep Breath and for 10 seconds after you call 2 Draktyrs to cast Pyre and the Zerg Strike and the 4-piece, while this Squadron is active, your Mass Eruption now hits 5 targets instead of 3, or 3 targets by default. In addition, your Squadron now lasts 15 seconds instead of 10. It's an okay hero talent, it's not like that huge. Devastation has the better one for Flame Shaper. So the thing for Flame Shaper is that it's already being played as a default by Devastation. What makes this strong is that Engulf strokes your inner flame, increasing your damage and healing over time by 40% and your chance to gain Essence Burst by 50% for 10 seconds, and it stacks up twice these two buffs. On top of that, the 4-piece consuming Essence Burst during this Inner Flame 10-second window will fire an Essence Bomb, which I believe is like 500% spell power damage, damaging nearby enemies with damage reduced beyond 5 targets. This is good because unlike Preservation, where this buff increasing your HOTS wasn't that relevant, for Devastation, you do have Fire Breath doing dot damage plus Firestorm buffed to an extent, which is now being played, and it does also dot damage. So now you get buffed in multiple ways for doing dot damage. On top of that, you play around Engulf quite a lot. You have quite a lot of burst around Engulf and proccing you to get much higher Essence Burst procs, meaning more casts of Pyre, which already is your highest damage ability in Mythic Plus for AoE damage, is also very good for this tier set for Devastation, both in single target as well as in AoE. So between the two Evoker ones, the definite winner is Flame Shaper right now for Devastation, which was already ahead of Scale Commander anyways, so it's not too good of a look for the competitor. Aug Dev Hunter has a couple of interesting problems right now, if you can call them that. Pack Leader is very overtuned right now. Their damage is quite high compared to Dark Ranger for Beast Mastery Hunter. Dark Ranger does give 10% more damage to your Black Arrow and Bleak Powder, increased by 20%, firing a Black Arrow, reducing the cooldown of Call of the Wild by 2 seconds. This is not very good by default. The 4-piece isn't that strong either. Withering's Fire Black Arrow damage is increased by 25%, and consuming Death Blows having a 30% chance to cause all of the Black Arrow barrages during your next Withering Fire to fire 1 additional Black Arrow. The strong part of Hunter, of BM, is in Pack Leader. Pet damage is increased by 5%, and your beast damage, this refers to these beasts being procced by Pack Leader on top of your beast damage increased by 5%. You also get that buff, plus you also get summoning a beast, giving you 8% haste master your crit depending on the type of beast you summoned, plus summoning a beast will have a 25% chance to rouse the nearby wildfire into a stampede, charging and doing damage over 3 seconds, and your chance to summon a stampede is guaranteed when you have Bestial Wrath, when you basically trigger Bestial Wrath. This is right now doing a lot of damage and being very strong. Doesn't really do much else to your rotation. It's pretty passive. You just play, get your beast to be summoned and gain some free secondary stat buffs. So not being really too complicated as expected really for the playstyle of BM, but it is very powerful numbers wise. Talking about marksmanship, you have one pretty weak one Sentinel. When Lunar Storm fades, gain the Boon of Elune, casting your next 2 aim shot to deal arcane damage and have their damage increased by 10%. Is fine because turning aim shot into arcane damage means they are not physical, which means they bypass armor, so it's closer to a 30% damage increase, but this is it's barely overall throughout an entire fight is barely at, basically this reads your aim shots will deal 10% more damage, which is pretty small. Then Sentinel's damage being increased by 10% and abilities that consume Boon of Elune applying 2 stacks of Sentinel is also weak overall. Plus, Marksmanship was already playing with Dark Ranger, so you needed something powerful for Sentinel to overtake Dark Ranger, which is not gonna happen, at least in single target. These ones are more relevant and more powerful than the BM version of Dark Ranger. You have more synergy around your Black Arrow and your Death Blow usage as a Marksmanship hunter, as well as the CDR of True Shot having more value than the CDR of Call of the Wild for BM. So this is a stronger tier set for Marksmanship right now, at least numbers wise, but also playstyle wise, especially this part for Marksmanship. And up to now, these tier sets were between good to okay or slightly disappointing. Now we get into the badness of Mage. For once, Blizzard doesn't seem to have hit the mark for mages across the board. So Arcane blast damage increased by 20%, direct splinter damage has a 50% chance to give you a stack of Arcane Harmony. Damage from Arcane Orb has a 100% chance to give you another stack of Arcane Harmony, up to 5 times, and when Arcane Harmony reaches maximum stacks, you gain Intuition. This is, the best you can get, basically. It has more value in single target than it does in AoE, because in AoE you tend to cast less and to put less importance in Arcane Missiles, which means you have less of a chance to cap your stacks of Arcane Harmony and get your reset, your proc of Intuition. But in single target, this happens way more. Now, in AoE, this doesn't have nearly as much of a power boost for Arcane, but it is still a decent tier set. It's not one of the OP ones right now, but it is a fine tier set. Where things go wrong for Arcane is some Fury. And this goes wrong for Fire as well. We are just bumping them up together because it's equally questionable what Blizzard did here. So the 2-piece set bonus is mostly forgettable. Spell Fire Spheres now give you 1% more spell damage bonus, and your Arcane Phoenix has a 1 chance in 4 to not consume a sphere when they cast an exceptional spell. This is okay. Considering the numbers of some of these is actually even slightly lower down in the damage increase of your 2-piece. Where things go terribly wrong is the 4-piece. When your Phoenix expires, you gain lesser time warp and 10% increase spell damage. What's the problem with the Phoenix expiring, both for Arcane and Fire? The problem is that Phoenix will expire when you're done with Arcane Surge, and Phoenix will expire when you're done with Combustion. So, once you're done casting Combustion, dumping all of your charges of Fire Blast, the charges of Phoenix Flames, possibly your Trinket, so once you have done with that, you get this lesser time warp and 10% more damage from the tier set. You wanted this inside of Combustion, not right after Combustion is over. So this is a quite counterintuitive 4-piece for both Fire and Arcane right now, which is what is making some Fury trash for both Fire and Arcane at the moment. It's not that Frost is living that much better of a life. Fire same gets Frostfire, which is a case of at least it's not some Fury. It's not amazing, it's not great, but at least it's not some Fury. You have this thing where when you cast Pyro, you have a 20% chance to cast Glacial Spike at 100% effectiveness and also benefit from Ignite. It's free damage. It's a free damage thing which will not really impact your rotation too much, but at least it's not as terrible as this one. It's the same pretty much for Frost, except even weaker than the one of Fire. Spellslinger is possibly even worse for Frost because it's gonna focus on Cold Front. Now, while Spellslinger for Arcane focuses on gaining Arcane Harmony stacks and gaining Intuition, these are both very good for Arcane. You always, not always, but very often, almost always play with Arcane Harmony to get your damage increase on your Arcane Barrage, and you always play with Intuition. So getting stacks of Arcane Harmony and getting your procs of Intuition is still very good. However, Frost Mage is not exactly playing with Cold Front. On top of this, the way to stack this up for Arcane Mage is very simple. You stack your Arcane Harmony up with Arcane Missile, which you cast more than enough in single target. For Frost Mage, the way to stack up this cold front is with Frostfire Bolt, which is not exactly something you cast that often as a Frost Mage. So having this entire tier set which focuses around something you don't even want to play right now, let alone having to lose one of these talents to pick Cold Front just to focus on this Frozen Orb cast from Frostbolts and Flurries, is not too good for Frost. So already Arcane and Fire had a couple of problems in some Fury. Frost Mage is like a loss. It's an L in both of the hero talents. Now for Priest, so Priest, you do have Archon, which is pretty decent in AoE and possibly might continue to be strong in Mythic Plus for their AoE damage. Similar to Holy Priest, your Halo will give you more Insanity and will give you more damage of DP, and the 4-piece will give you up to 2 more casts, 2 more rings extending of Halo. If you cast basically 4 Devouring Plagues in the window when Halo is active, it's good for AoE damage. For multi-target damage is fine in Mythic Plus. In single target, this is very poor. It's very poor. Archon was already weaker than Void Weaver, so this is not helping at all in single target. And what's worse is that this one for Void Weaver is crazy good, which is the problem. Void Blast and Penance damage being increased by 40% is massive, because Shadow Priest has about 17% Void Blast damage in single target or close to single target. So buffing this by 40% by itself is a 7% damage buff. That's it. Like, this first part over here is 7% more damage done. And then you add that Void Blast now has a 20% haste on it, 20% faster to cast, and then you add 50% reduced cooldown. This is very good. It's very powerful for Void Weaver. And then the 4-piece, Void Blast now causes your Entropic Rift to grow, giving you more stacking damage the more you make it grow, and then the damage of your next Void Torrent will be increased by up to 200% based on how much you made the Rift grow. This is very good. It's also good in both AoE and single target, because Void Blast can work in both pretty much. So it's just a powerful tier set for both, and completely trumps the power of Archon right now for Shadow Priest. Unlike Shaman has the split, much like Priest, where Farseer is for single target, Stormbringer is for AoE. So Farseer is I guess it's a smooth hero talent. Ancestral Swiftness, which is pretty simple to play around, it's a 30-second window button that you practically press all the time on cooldown basically, will empower your Ancestor for 15 seconds, dealing, this is wrong, 10% increased damage and healing. And then the 4-piece, Ancestral Swiftness, will also buff you for 8 seconds, giving you 25, not 8, 25% haste, 25% less mana cost, which is for Resto, and then increasing the recharge of Lava Burst by 50% for 8 seconds. So this is fine. It's just a cyclic rotation every 30 seconds where you gain this mini cooldown for 8 seconds. That is just nice to play around. It's not that great in terms of numbers. It just smoothens out your rotation and gives you small pockets of burst of basically 25% haste for 8 seconds on a cyclical 30-second window for Farseer for single target of Elemental, which is fine. Stormbringer does have something a bit more drastic. Ascendance guarantees you a stack of Tempest, and then every 6 Awakening Storms you also get Ascendance for 6 seconds. So Awakening Storms, of course, is the RNG proc that every time you get to 3, it turns your next Lightning Bolt into a Tempest. Now, whenever you get 6 of these, so whenever you get basically 2 back-to-back procs of this effect, you also now get into Ascendance for 6 seconds. On top of this, your nature damage is also flat out increased by 5%, and Ascendance empowers your 2 next Tempest, causing them to, well, do more damage, pretty much. This is fine. It's practically, basically, throughout a key in Mythic Plus, for example, like 10, 12 procs of this 6-second Ascendance. It's extra burst on random moments, which is more valuable in Mythic Plus, where you have more constant pulse of AoE, so proccing this for 6 seconds might be good, even if you don't have cooldowns line up, like if you were in a raid, for example, which fits the theme of Stormbringer right now, which is the hero talent for Mythic Plus, for Elemental Shaman. So it's a, thematically at least, it's a fine set of hero talents for Shaman, both for single target and for AoE, when it comes to Stormbringer, at least. The last one is Warlock, which is in a bit of a pickle right now. So Warlock has the most OP hero talents right now. Possibly like 3 of them are all OP. So what's going down right now is the Hellcaller version of both Affliction and Destruction are super strong. So your Mark of Xavius, which is just your passive hero talent, which gives your Blackened Soul to deal more damage per stack of Wither, is 2%. This hero talent, without asking any questions, turns this 2% to an 8% per stack. So it like quadruples the value of that talent. Plus, Malevolence will also give you free 2 stacks of Wither every time you activate Malevolence. On top of this, the 4-piece casting Malevolence will grant you 2 stacks of Backdraft, which is whatever, but more importantly, prevents Blackened Soul from consuming stacks while dealing damage also on top of this, 25% faster for 8 seconds. What makes this OP, of course, is that as you gain stacks of Wither, you have Blackened Soul. Every time Wither does damage, you also have a chance to collapse the stack, doing extra damage but losing 1 stack. So when you trigger your Malevolence, when you enter your cooldown, basically, you progressively gain more and more stacks. These stacks have chances to collapse from Blackened Soul, and now this tier set makes it so that Blackened Soul doesn't decrease the stacks anymore, at least during your Malevolence window. On top of making them tick faster for 8 seconds, on top of Blackened Soul doing quadruple the damage it was doing before. And this is particularly problematic for Destro, because Destro is doing even more. We are in this bizarro world where Destro does even more dot damage than Affliction, which is supposedly the dot spec. So Affliction's Wither is like 25% of your damage. It can be 1.3 million DPS in your Mythic Plus key, for example, when it comes to AoE. For Destro, it's just more. It's the way Destro works. Their talents, their passives, even their mastery synergize around Wither more. And this tier set is making this way too strong, essentially. And you can see the value of Blackened Soul with Destro compared to the value of Blackened Soul with Affliction, which is much lower. So this one, focusing not just on Wither, but on Blackened Soul, the value of Blackened Soul not dropping in stacks is crazy good for Destro. And good, very good for Affliction, which by default makes these two extremely good for these 2 specs, which by default makes Hellcaller extremely good and the best pick for both. Demo is not any weaker, because right now their Soul Harvester is OP and Diabolist is OP. In fact, both of your talents for Demo are very strong. This one is very strong. Whenever you cast a full power Hand of Gul'dan, you gain a bunch of Demonic Eyes, up to 3. These Demonic Eyes, when you consume Demonic Art, are flung at your enemies doing AoE damage, and also every time you throw these eyes at enemies, you gain stacking 2% intellect for 10 seconds. This is very good because we are entering late game right now. We are entering max secondary stat power levels right now, which means tons of haste, which means tons of generation of soul shards, which means you have tons of room to dump power in your Hand of Gul'dan at full shards to gain tons of these eyes for tons of damage. That is what is making this tier set very powerful for Demo right now. Also, it's not that this one right now, at least, it's any weaker. This Shadow of Death unleashing your demonic soul, this is coded as a demon, so right now the dot extra is counted as demon damage, and then the demonic soul damage and the wicked ripping damage are also demon damage, which means they fully scale with Demo's mastery, which makes this even stronger. What is very good for Affliction in this, even though they don't scale with this as much as Demo, is Your demonic soul now generates 1 soul shards every 3 seconds while assaulting enemies. It's good because affliction across these 3 perhaps is the one that enjoys the most being flooded with soul shards for Malefic Rapture. So it's the one that benefits the most from this effect when it comes to Soul Harvester. But overall, actually, if we had to round up all of the hero talents, the ones who currently have the biggest powers at the moment is Warlock. Definitely. The ones with the biggest powers are Warlock. The one with the most disappointing powers across the board is Mage. For once, I'm sure Blizzard will rectify this grave mistake of not making Mage the strongest one and fix them before live. Elemental Shaman is pretty okay. I guess it might be cool to get Ascendance procs, more so than the first tier version. Priest, this is meh for AoE, and even then it gets overshadowed by the power of the Void Weaver hero talent. Hunter, as a whole right now, is doing pretty well, but mostly because of Pack Leader for BM Hunter. Evoker, Flameshaper Devastation is looking very strong, and Balance both are good. This might possibly be abusable in degenerate ways, but the strongest one right now is Luna's Chosen. It's a very solid hero talent for Mythic Plus, for AoE damage at the moment. So, after going through these ranged DPS hero talents, we can see that the damage numbers seem to be higher than this current season, definitely intentionally. Blizzard seems to be aiming at a higher power from the tier set compared to the experimental, somewhat boring set of default procs we have gotten in Season 2. So it seems like for the last set of tier sets of the expansion, they have let go their imagination a bit more and be a bit more free with the damage increases. However, for today, on this Tuesday, right about yet another reset for this season, it's now time to leave each other. We're starting the goodbyes by thanking everyone for having watched the video, together with, of course, everyone else who has been supporting completely for free by liking and commenting down below, as well as subscribing to the channel itself. Now, with these things out of the way, thank you again for watching. See you guys tomorrow, and in the meantime, I've been trying to have this video for the past like 4 hours. Apparently, for 3 hours in a row, we had neighborhood-wide blackouts every 20 minutes. I wonder what kind of power outlet was being messed with.